My name is Miss Calloway. I'm 29 years old. On Tuesday morning at 9:47 a.m., I stood in courtroom 4B of the Harris County Probate Court in Houston, Texas, watching my stepmother Diane tell a judge I didn't know what day of the week it was, while her lawyer Curtis Hamley nodded along like a dashboard bobblehead, and her boyfriend Trevor smirked from the third row. Your Honor, she called me at 2 a.m. last Thursday asking where her father was, Diane said, pressing a tissue to her perfectly dry eyes. Robert's been gone 14 months. She doesn't even know what day it is, Your Honor. She forgets entire conversations. I'm terrified for her, Your Honor. I stood there in my gray suit from Target, hands folded, face neutral. The gallery was packed. Aunt Colette sat behind Diane with her two daughters. Diane's hairdresser was there. 32 people total, by my count. They all watched me like I might start screaming or crying or prove Diane right. Miss Calloway, Judge Patricia Moreno said, do you understand why we're here today? Yes, Your Honor. My stepmother has filed an emergency petition for conservatorship over me and my father's trust, claiming I'm mentally incompetent to manage my own affairs. Diane's lawyer stood. Your Honor, the respondent's very defensiveness demonstrates the paranoid ideation we've documented. She believes her stepmother is conspiring against her, when Mrs. Calloway has only tried to help since Mr. Calloway's tragic passing. My stomach was a block of ice, but my voice stayed level. I'm not paranoid, Mr. Hamley. I'm a forensic auditor. I know the difference between suspicion and evidence. That's when Diane made her first mistake. She turned to Curtis and whispered, but the courtroom acoustics carried it perfectly. She doesn't even have a real job. Tell him. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. Let me take you back 17 years to when I was 12 years old. My mother had been gone 8 months. Cancer took her on a Tuesday in February, and by October my father brought Diane home for the first time. I remember she wore a cream cashmere sweater and brought homemade lemon bars that tasted like furniture polish. She crouched down to my level in our kitchen on Willow Creek Lane and said, "Your daddy tells me you're a smart girl. We're going to be such good friends, aren't we?" My father stood behind her, and his smile looked real for the first time since the funeral. He'd lost 23 pounds. He'd stopped sleeping. I wanted that smile to stay. Yes, ma'am, I said. Diane touched my chin. Call me Diane, sweetheart. Ma'am makes me sound old. Then she stood and linked her arm through my father's. Robert, show me the rest of this beautiful house. My father married her 4 months later. I wore a yellow dress to the courthouse wedding. Diane bought it for me. It was 2 sizes too small, but I didn't say anything because Dad looked happy, and I'd learned by then that keeping Dad happy meant keeping Diane happy, meant keeping quiet. The night before he died, my father held my hand in his hospital room at Methodist. He was lucid for the first time in 6 days. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer doesn't leave much time for goodbyes, but he managed to say, "Starfish, I fixed it. The trust. Everything goes to you. Diane knows. She agreed. You're going to be okay." Starfish. He'd called me that since I was 5, after I'd collected 47 starfish on Galveston Beach and tried to save them all by putting them in our bathtub. Rest, Dad, I told him. I'm right here. Promise me you'll check the documents. The lawyer has everything. Promise me. I promise. He died at 6:14 a.m. I was holding his hand when the monitor went flat. Diane was in the waiting room on her phone. I heard her through the door. Yes, I need to speak to Roger about the trust amendment. Today, if possible. 2 weeks after the funeral, Diane sat me down in Dad's study. The room still smelled like his cologne, sandalwood, and leather. She had a manila folder in front of her. Your father left very specific instructions, she said. The trust has been restructured. You'll receive a monthly allowance of $1,800 until you turn 35, at which point you'll inherit 20%. I'll manage the principal in the interim to ensure long-term stability. I'd read Dad's will when I was 23, right after I'd graduated with my accounting degree. He'd shown it to me himself. Everything went to me outright at his death. The trust was worth $4.2 million in commercial properties and investment accounts. That's not what Dad told me, I said. He said everything goes to me. He updated it 18 months ago. Diane's expression didn't change. She slid a document across the desk. This is the amended trust, signed by your father and witnessed by his attorney, Curtis Hamley, dated 3 weeks before his death. The signature looked right. The date was wrong. Dad had been incoherent 3 weeks before his death, barely conscious from the morphine. I want to speak to the attorney, I said. Of course, I'll arrange it. Diane stood. She smoothed her skirt. Your father and I discussed this extensively. He worried about your judgment, sweetheart. You're young. You've never managed substantial assets. This protects you. That word, sweetheart, she used it like a scalpel. I met with Curtis Hamley 4 days later in his office on Westheimer. He had the same manila folder. He explained the trust structure in careful legal language that boiled down to, Diane controls everything until I'm 35, and even then I only get 20%. I'd like to see the original will, I said, the one from 18 months ago. Curtis's smile was patient, professional. Miss Calloway, your father revised his estate plan multiple times. The most recent document supersedes all previous versions. That's standard practice. I understand. I'd still like to see it. Attorney-client privilege extends beyond death. I can't share documents that aren't part of the current estate plan without the executor's permission. Who's the executor? Mrs. Diane Calloway. I left that office and sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes. My hands were shaking. I told myself I was wrong. I told myself Dad had changed his mind, that he'd wanted to protect me, that Diane was right about my judgment. I told myself I was imagining things. 3 months later, I noticed the first discrepancy. I'd started checking the trust statements Diane forwarded monthly. She sent them as PDFs with no cover letter, just the attachment. June's statement showed a withdrawal of $7,200 marked Property Maintenance Galveston Unit. We didn't own property in Galveston. I called the trust's bank. They couldn't discuss account details without the trustee's authorization. I called Diane. It's the condo, she said. Your father purchased it 2 years ago as an investment. I'm renting it out. The maintenance fees are deducted from trust assets, per the trust agreement. What's the address? I don't have it in front of me, sweetheart. I'll email you the details. She never did. July statement, $8,100, same notation. August, $7,400. September, $6,900. I started keeping a spreadsheet. Over 4 months, Diane had withdrawn $31,000 for a property I'd never heard of, couldn't verify existed, and she refused to provide documentation for. I went back to Curtis Hamley's office without an appointment. I need to see the Galveston property deed, I told his receptionist. Curtis came out personally. He was younger than I'd thought, maybe 40, with the kind of smile that probably worked on juries. Miss Calloway, if you have concerns about trust management, you should discuss them with Mrs. Calloway directly. I have. She won't provide the address or proof of ownership. The trustee has broad discretion in managing trust assets. If you believe there's been malfeasance, you're welcome to petition the probate court for an accounting. How much does that cost? Legal fees for trust litigation typically start around $15,000. I had $4,200 in my checking account. I was working as a mid-level analyst at a regional accounting firm, making $58,000 a year before taxes. I couldn't afford a lawyer. Curtis knew it. His smile stayed perfectly calibrated. I'm sure Mrs. Calloway would be happy to discuss any questions you have. She's been very concerned about you, actually. She mentioned you've been calling her at odd hours, making accusations. I called her twice, once at 9 a.m., once at 7 p.m. She said you sounded confused, forgetful. She's worried you might be experiencing some cognitive difficulties. My face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. I'm a forensic auditor, Mr. Hamley. I spent 6 years helping the IRS build fraud cases. I know what embezzlement looks like. Then I'm sure you understand the importance of evidence. He gestured toward the door. If you'll excuse me, I have a deposition. I walked out of that office and I knew. I knew what Diane was doing. I knew Curtis was helping her. And I knew I couldn't prove any of it. Not yet. I stopped calling Diane. I stopped asking questions. I accepted the monthly allowance without comment. I let her think I'd given up. And I started building my case. My forensic training taught me that fraud always leaves traces. Shell companies need registered agents. Wire transfers leave digital footprints. Forged documents have metadata. I just needed access. I started small. I requested public records for property ownership in Galveston County, under both the trust's name and Diane's. It took 6 weeks and $40 in processing fees, but I found it. A 2-bedroom condo purchased 8 months after Dad's death for $290,000. The buyer, Bluebird Properties, LLC. The registered agent for Bluebird Properties, LLC, Curtis Hamley. I pulled the corporate filings. Bluebird had been formed 3 months before Dad died. The managing member, D.M. Calloway, Diane Marie Calloway. I sat at my kitchen table with these documents spread in front of me, and I understood what I was looking at. Diane hadn't just stolen from the trust after Dad died. She'd been planning it before. I started digging deeper. Over the next 7 months, I found 2 more shell companies, Gulf Horizon Consulting and Legacy Asset Management, both registered by Curtis, both managed by D.M. Calloway. Between the 3 companies, $310,000 had been siphoned from the trust in increments of $5,000 to $8,000, small enough not to trigger automatic bank reviews. The money had been used to purchase the Galveston condo, a boat I found registered in Trevor Fisk's name, and what appeared to be quarterly payments to Curtis for estate management consulting. I documented everything. I built spreadsheets cross-referencing dates, amounts, and wire transfer records I obtained through a friend who worked in banking compliance. I tracked IP addresses from the trust's online portal showing logins from 1847 Willow Creek Lane, Diane's house, my childhood home, at times when she claimed to be traveling. I worked on this every night after my day job, sometimes until 2 a.m. My apartment was a studio in Montrose that cost $1,400 a month. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I stopped going out. My coworker Sarah asked if I was okay, and I said I was fine, just busy. I was building a case. Then Diane showed up at my office. It was a Thursday in March, 3:15 p.m. I was at my desk reviewing a client's tax return when our receptionist Melinda called back. "Miss Calloway? There's a Diane Calloway here to see you. She says she's your mother." My stomach dropped. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." 2 minutes later, Diane walked into the shared workspace anyway. She wore a cream suit and heels that clicked against the linoleum. Everyone looked up. "There you are, sweetheart," Diane said loudly. "I've been trying to reach you for days. You haven't been returning my calls." I stood. "This isn't a good time, Diane. I'm working." "I can see that." She glanced around at my coworkers, at Sarah and Tom and Jennifer, who were all staring. "I brought you lunch. I thought we could talk." She held up a bag from the deli I used to love when I was in high school, the one Dad used to take me to on Saturdays. "I already ate," I lied. Diane's face did something complicated. Her eyes got shiny, her voice went soft and wounded. "You've been avoiding me for months, and I don't understand why. I've tried so hard to be there for you after your father." Her voice broke. "I know you're angry about the trust, but he wanted to protect you. I'm just honoring his wishes." Sarah stood up from her desk. "Do you need a minute, Miss Calloway?" "No," I said. Diane was just leaving, but Diane wasn't done. She stepped closer, and her perfume was the same one she'd worn to Dad's funeral, lilac and something chemical. "I spoke to Curtis this morning. He's very concerned. He said you've been making wild accusations, claiming I've stolen from you." She said it loud enough for the whole office to hear. "Sweetheart, I think you need help. Professional help. This paranoia isn't healthy." Something hardened in my chest. Something cold and final. I looked at Diane and I saw her clearly for the first time. The careful makeup, the expensive suit bought with trust money, the performance of concern for an audience of my coworkers. "You're right," I said calmly. "I should probably get some help. Thank you for your concern." Diane blinked. She'd been expecting me to argue, to defend myself, to make a scene. My agreement confused her. "Oh," she said. "Well, good. I'm glad you're being reasonable." She set the lunch bag on my desk. "Call me when you're ready to talk. I love you, sweetheart. You know that." She left. The office was silent for approximately 30 seconds. Then the whispers started. I sat back down at my desk. My hands were steady. I opened my email and sent myself a note with the timestamp. March 14th, 3:18 p.m. Diane appeared at workplace uninvited, made public statements about my mental health, used phrases, wild accusations, paranoia, professional help. I was documenting everything now. That night, I found the letter. I'd been going through the boxes from Dad's study that Diane had let me take after the funeral. Most of it was junk, old golf scorecards, birthday cards from me, photographs. But at the bottom of the third box, wrapped in a Ziploc bag, was a sealed envelope with my name on it in Dad's handwriting. "Miss Calloway, do not open until you need it." My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a key. The letter said, "Starfish, if you're reading this, then I'm gone." And Diane is already doing what I knew she would do. "I'm sorry I couldn't stop this while I was alive. I tried, but she doesn't hear reason. She only hears documents. Do you remember when you were 8 and you asked me why Mom kept all her important papers in that fireproof safe? I told you it was because some things are too valuable to lose. You said, like my spelling tests? I still have those, by the way, all of them. The original trust amendment is with my real attorney, Roger Bateman. His office is at 4200 Westheimer, Suite 310. The copy I've left you here is incomplete. Not enough to prove anything on its own, but enough for you to know I'm telling the truth. This key opens Safe Deposit Box 847 at First National Bank, Downtown Branch. Inside you'll find the unrevised trust documents naming you as sole beneficiary. My medical records from the last 6 months showing I was not competent to sign anything after January. Bank statements I saved showing the first transfers to Diane's shell companies. A letter I wrote to Roger, explaining everything, dated and notarized. Evidence of Curtis Hamley's relationship with Diane that predates our marriage. Don't show this to anyone. Not Colette, not even your friend Sarah. Wait until the right time. Roger will know what to do. You are not paranoid. You are not confused. You are my daughter, and you see the truth even when it's ugly. Always have. All my love, Dad. P.S. I hid this letter the week before I went into the hospital. If you're reading it, my starfish plan worked. I knew you'd go through those boxes. You never could resist a mystery. I read it 4 times. Then I cried for 20 minutes sitting on my kitchen floor. Then I called Roger Bateman. His assistant answered. I explained who I was. She put me on hold for 90 seconds. Then Roger himself picked up. "Miss Calloway," he said. His voice was warm and tired. "I wondered if you'd find the letter. I've been waiting 14 months. "You knew," I said, "this whole time." "Your father came to me 2 years ago. He suspected Diane was planning something. He wanted protection in place." Roger paused. "I'm sorry I couldn't contact you directly. Robert's instructions were specific. He said you'd need to figure it out on your own first, that the evidence would be more powerful if you built the case yourself." "I have 7 months of documentation," I said. "Shell companies, wire transfers, IP logs from trust account access. $310,000 siphoned." "Good. We'll need all of it." Roger's voice changed, became more formal. "Miss Calloway, I need to inform you that Diane filed an emergency conservatorship petition this morning. The hearing is scheduled for next Tuesday at 10 a.m., courtroom 4B. She's claiming you're mentally incompetent to manage your affairs." My apartment was very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. "Of course she is," I said. "She doesn't know I'm your father's attorney. Curtis handled the false trust documents. She thinks she's covered her tracks." Roger paused. "Are you ready to fight this?" I thought about Dad holding my hand in that hospital room. I thought about him planning this for 2 years, knowing he was dying, trying to protect me even after he was gone. "Yes," I said. "Then go to the safe deposit box tomorrow. Bring the contents to my office. And Miss Calloway? Don't tell anyone, not even people you trust. Diane has more allies than you think." He was right about that. The next day, I went to the bank. The safe deposit box contained exactly what Dad had promised, plus one thing he hadn't mentioned: a flash drive labeled Recorded Conversations, DM and CH, 2019 to 2021. I took everything to Roger's office. We spent 6 hours going through it. The recorded conversations were Dad secretly recording Diane and Curtis discussing how to restructure the trust to cut me out. The dates ranged from 8 months before Dad got sick to 2 weeks before his death. In one recording, Curtis said, "If she challenges it, we'll claim incompetence, depression, grief, whatever. I can get a psychiatrist to evaluate her." Diane's voice: "She won't challenge it, she's too timid. Robert babied her." Curtis: "And if she does?" Diane: "Then we make sure no one believes her." Roger looked at me across his desk. He was 60-something, gray-haired, and he had kind eyes. "Your father was a careful man. He knew exactly what Diane was." "Why didn't he leave her?" I asked. "Why stay married to someone like that?" "He tried to leave. Twice. She threatened to claim he was abusing you. She said she'd tell the police, CPS, anyone who'd listen. He couldn't risk it." Roger closed the file. "So he stayed, and he planned. He made sure that when he was gone, you'd have everything you needed to win." I went home that night and I pulled out every piece of documentation I'd collected over the past 7 months. I added it to Dad's evidence. I organized it all into a black binder with colored tabs: red for financial records, blue for IP logs, green for corporate filings, yellow for the perjury evidence showing Curtis had backdated the false trust documents. The metadata on the forged trust amendment showed it had been created on Curtis's office computer 4 days after Dad died. 4 days. They'd waited until he was in the ground before they started falsifying documents. On Tuesday morning, I walked into courtroom 4B with that binder. Diane sat at the plaintiff's table with Curtis. She wore black, like she was still in mourning. Her boyfriend Trevor was in the gallery with Aunt Colette and the cousins, Diane's hairdresser. 32 people total. They all looked at me like I was already defeated. Roger sat at the defense table. He'd told me to let him do most of the talking, but that when the time came, I'd know. Judge Moreno called the hearing to order at 10:03 a.m. Curtis presented Diane's case first. He called a psychiatrist who'd never met me but had reviewed concerning reports of my behavior. He called Aunt Colette, who testified that I'd seemed distant and confused at family gatherings. He played a voicemail I'd left Diane at 11 p.m. asking about a trust disbursement, and he characterized it as evidence of obsessive paranoid fixation. Then Diane took the stand. She performed beautifully. She cried at the right moments. She talked about how much she'd loved my father, how she'd tried to be there for me, how heartbroken she was to take this step. "She called me at 2 a.m. last Thursday asking where Robert was," Diane said, dabbing her eyes. "Your Honor, he's been gone 14 months. She doesn't even know what day it is. She forgets entire conversations. I'm terrified for her." Curtis asked about the trust. Diane explained that she'd been managing it according to Dad's wishes, that the monthly disbursements to me were generous, that she'd done everything possible to protect assets I was too unstable to handle. "Has Miss Calloway made any accusations against you?" Curtis asked. "Yes." Diane's voice broke. "She's accused me of stealing from her. She's claimed I've forged documents, that I've created fake companies. She showed up at my house at midnight once, demanding to see records that don't exist. I've tried to be patient, but I'm genuinely afraid she might hurt herself or me." The gallery murmured. Aunt Colette nodded. Trevor whispered something to the hairdresser. Judge Moreno looked at me. Miss Calloway, do you wish to respond? I stood. I picked up the black binder. I walked to the bench. Your Honor, my stepmother is correct that I've made accusations. I'd like to present evidence. I placed the binder in front of Judge Moreno. She opened it. The red tabs are financial records showing $310,000 transferred from the Calloway Family Trust to 3 shell companies: Bluebird Properties, LLC, Gulf Horizon Consulting, and Legacy Asset Management. All 3 companies were registered by Curtis Hamley and managed by my stepmother, Diane Marie Calloway. The funds were used to purchase a Galveston condo, a boat, and to pay Mr. Hamley for services never authorized by the trust. The courtroom went completely silent. Curtis stood. Your Honor, this is— Sit down, Mr. Hamley, Judge Moreno said. She was reading the documents. I continued. The blue tabs contain IP access logs from the Trust's online banking portal, showing logins from 1847 Willow Creek Lane between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. on 17 separate occasions. That's my stepmother's residence. The timestamps correspond exactly to the dates of fraudulent transfers. Diane's face had gone white. She looked at Curtis. He looked at the floor. The green tabs are corporate filings for the 3 shell companies. You'll see they were all formed 3 to 6 months before my father's death. I turned a page. My father died of pancreatic cancer on March 3rd. According to his oncologist's records, also included, he was not competent to make legal decisions after January 15th due to advanced disease and high-dose morphine. The trust amendment Mr. Hamley presented is dated February 22nd. I've had a forensic document examiner analyze it. The metadata shows it was created on Mr. Hamley's office computer on March 7th, 4 days after my father died. Curtis shot to his feet. Your Honor, I object to these allegations. This is a conservatorship hearing, not a fraud investigation, Mr. Hamley, Judge Moreno said, and her voice was ice. You are the petitioner's attorney, and you are named in these documents as the registered agent for multiple companies accused of embezzling from an estate you were supposedly managing. Sit down and be quiet. She kept reading. The silence in the courtroom was profound, 32 people holding their breath. The yellow tabs, I said quietly, contain evidence of perjury. Mr. Hamley filed an affidavit with this court claiming he witnessed my father sign the amended trust on February 22nd. My father's medical records show he was admitted to Methodist Hospital on February 20th and remained there until his death. The hospital visitor logs show Mr. Hamley never visited. He never witnessed anything. The signature is a forgery. Diane made a small sound, almost a whimper. Judge Moreno looked up. Mrs. Calloway, did you file this conservatorship petition to prevent Miss Calloway from discovering your theft? No, Diane said. No, Your Honor, this is all a misunderstanding. My stepdaughter is unwell. She's paranoid. These documents are notarized, dated, and cross-referenced with bank records and corporate filings. Judge Moreno closed the binder. Miss Calloway, what is your occupation? I'm a forensic auditor, Your Honor. I spent 6 years helping the Internal Revenue Service build fraud cases before moving to the private sector. Of course you are, Judge Moreno said. She looked at Diane. Mrs. Calloway, let me be very clear. This conservatorship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and perjury. Diane stood. Your Honor, please. You claim this young woman didn't know what day it is. She just presented a 200-page forensic analysis of your criminal activity, complete with metadata, IP logs, and corporate filings. She knew exactly what day it was. She knew what you were doing every single day. Curtis grabbed his briefcase. Your Honor, my client and I would like to request a continuance to— Denied. Sit down, Mr. Hamley. Judge Moreno looked at me. Miss Calloway, I'm removing the current trustee effective immediately and appointing a neutral third-party administrator pending resolution of the criminal investigation. Do you have an attorney? Yes, Your Honor. Roger Bateman. I saw Curtis's face change, recognition and fear. Roger Bateman was your father's attorney? Judge Moreno asked. Yes, ma'am. My father retained him 2 years before his death specifically to handle this situation. Judge Moreno actually smiled. Your father was a very smart man. Mr. Bateman, please approach. Roger stood from the gallery. He'd been sitting in the back the whole time. He walked to the bench with a folder. Your Honor, Roger said, I have the original trust documents dated 18 months before Robert Calloway's death. They name Miss Calloway as sole beneficiary of all trust assets, effective immediately upon his passing. I also have a letter from Mr. Calloway explaining that he feared his wife would attempt exactly what she has attempted, and requesting that I wait for his daughter to discover the truth on her own before revealing my involvement. He handed the folder to Judge Moreno. She read it. When she looked up, her expression was something between anger and sadness. Mrs. Calloway, she said, you tried to steal $4.2 million from your stepdaughter. You created false documents. You committed perjury in my court. And when she began to uncover your scheme, you tried to have her declared incompetent. Judge Moreno paused. I've been a judge for 19 years. This is one of the most calculated, cruel things I've seen. Diane was crying now. Real tears, finally. I loved Robert. I loved him, and she got everything. She always got everything. She was his daughter, I said. My voice was steady. I was his child. You were the woman who married him 8 months after my mother died and spent the next 17 years isolating him from everyone who loved him. The courtroom was completely silent. I'm not here for revenge, I continued. I'm here for the truth. My father knew this day would come. He prepared for it. These documents speak for themselves. I turned and walked back to my seat. I didn't wait for Diane's response. I didn't wait for the apologies I knew wouldn't come. Judge Moreno scheduled a follow-up hearing for 30 days out. She granted me emergency access to the trust accounts. She ordered Diane to cease all contact with me and all access to trust assets. She ordered Curtis Hamley to surrender all estate documents and client files. As I left the courtroom, Aunt Colette grabbed my arm. I didn't know, she said. Miss Calloway, I swear I didn't know she was stealing. I looked at her. You knew she showed up at my office and called me paranoid in front of my coworkers. You knew she was trying to take everything Dad left me. You testified against me an hour ago. Colette's face crumpled. She said you needed help. She said Robert had wanted this. You believed her without asking me, without checking. I pulled my arm free. That's knowing enough. I walked out of the courthouse into Houston's sunshine. It was 11:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in April. The temperature was 73 degrees. Roger caught up with me on the steps. Your father would be very proud, he said. He taught me to count, I said. Every starfish, every document, every lie. 3 weeks later, the district attorney filed charges against Diane and Curtis. 11 counts of fraud, 4 counts of forgery, 3 counts of perjury, and 1 count of attempted theft over $250,000. Trevor Fisk, the boyfriend, turned state's witness in exchange for immunity. He provided emails showing Diane had been planning the scheme since before Dad's cancer diagnosis. She'd married him specifically for the trust. She'd researched his assets. She'd calculated exactly how long he'd likely live after diagnosis. Curtis Hamley was disbarred. He pleaded guilty to avoid jail time and agreed to repay $84,000 in fraudulent legal fees. Diane went to trial. She was convicted on 9 of the 11 fraud counts. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in prison and ordered full restitution. I didn't attend the sentencing. I'd said everything I needed to say in courtroom 4B. 1 year later, I'm sitting in a different apartment. It's a 2-bedroom in Rice Village with hardwood floors and a balcony where I grow tomatoes. I bought it with trust money, but only after the court-appointed administrator verified every transaction and Roger confirmed it was appropriate. I have a photograph on my desk of Dad and me at Galveston Beach. I'm 5 years old, holding a bucket full of starfish. He's smiling. Next to it is the letter he wrote me. I've read it maybe 100 times. The last line always hits the same. You are my daughter, and you see the truth even when it's ugly. I went to his grave last week. The one Diane didn't attend the sentencing for, the one she never visited after the funeral. I brought fresh flowers. I sat there for an hour. I checked the documents, Dad, I said, just like you asked. The truth is, I'm not healed. I don't know if I'll ever stop feeling the weight of those 17 years, the silence, the times I apologized for things I didn't do, the Christmases and birthdays where I smiled and pretended everything was fine because keeping Dad happy meant keeping Diane happy. But I'm free. That's something. If you're watching this and someone in your life is telling you you're crazy for noticing what you notice, type, "I see the truth," in the comments. Or if someone tried to silence you and you found your voice anyway, type, "I spoke up." Both are victories. Both matter. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here.